Alrighty, from the Beaver County Auto Studios. Well, I guess it's now the Pittsburgh Sports Live Studios, high above Market Square here in downtown Pittsburgh. Hey, kids, I'm Dan Kingerski. You know what? I remade my little name tag there. So, how is you? We're going to talk about, I'm sure, a lot of participation tonight, wide-ranging topics on the Pittsburgh Penguins kind of thing. We're going to talk about the Penguins' trade bait list we put up on Pittsburgh Hockey Now. Now, this is something I've been thinking about and we've been stewing over for several days now. And I didn't want to just, kind of knock it out in 15 minutes and throw up the two or three names. Really put a lot of thought into it. So, do me a favor, hop on the chat board tonight. We want to, really want to get into this with you as well. And I will probably let a few things slip that I shouldn't let slip. First, some site news. I can't tell you the big secret because it's not official yet. There was Pittsburgh Hockey Now. And then there was Boston Hockey Now. And I'm enjoying watching those guys. They're having a blast. They're getting to cover the Stanley Cup Final. I think I mentioned last week the Bruins did everything but roll out the red carpet for us, and they really have made us feel welcome at TD Garden and the practice facility, and they've given us a lot of access for Boston Hockey Now. Writers around the country have taken notice. I mean, I've known a lot of these guys for 10, 15 years, just because I was on the radio side and they were coming on my show. But when I started my own thing, they were taking notice, like, what the hell is Kingerski doing writing? Maybe I should do a radio show. And as Pittsburgh Hockey Now has grown, when we launched Boston, my DMs were full of people saying, well, hey, I might be interested. And some people would be a great addition to the team, but it takes somebody a little bit crazy or with tens of thousands of Twitter followers to really launch a new city. We got a couple of those, and one of those writers met with one of those teams today in another city. Things went pretty well, and if all goes well the next couple days, we will be announcing our third Hockey Now franchise. I can't wait. I'm just tickled. If you give some people an inch, they'll take a mile. If you give me an inch, I'll build the whole damn highway. And that's just kind of the way. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to do it. I'm not going to wait for a paycheck. I'm going to do what I see is possible. And then a few things that people didn't think were possible. I'll at least try. Don't always succeed, but I'm darn sure going to try. So let's get into the old little hockey thing here. The Penguins trade bait list. Let me move this out so I can... Oh, no! Down goes Rowdy. Oh, my name is covering up Rowdy. How dare I? Let's get my name off there. You don't need to know who I am. There's Rowdy. There's Bob and Doug. There's you on the chat board. Kevin is like, Philly? Philly is certainly on the radar. Philly's a tough hockey market because hockey is fourth in Philadelphia, really, behind the Eagles, the Phillies, the 76ers. Then comes the Flyers, and there's not really... It's not a gregarious sort of market that you just go walking into. You know what I'm saying? No, it won't be Philly, at least in this round of expansion. But Pittsburgh Penguins trade bait. Number 5 on the list. We put this guy, Brian Rust. This was one that I didn't expect to put on the list as I went over things and put myself in Jim Rutherford's shoes and more specifically, other general managers' shoes. This is a guy who suddenly became very plausible. Not necessarily in a way that the Penguins are going to want to get rid of Brian Rust. Quite the contrary. He is the Pittsburgh Penguins' Swiss Army knife. Top line right wing, second line left wing. Third line right wing, third line left wing. Even played both wings on the fourth line at different points this year. Hell, if they needed him on defense, I'm sure he would do that too. His speed, his tenacity is top tier. His offense really came in one 6-week bunch this year. He went the 29 games with just one goal. That was a little bit of, I think, an issue. I think also the issue is, or the two other issues with Bryan Rust, at least long-term looking at it, is that, one, he makes, was it 3.5, closer to $4 million? Was it it was a 4-year, $14 million. So yeah, 3.5. And so there's that kind of working against him. He did have 35 points in 72 games. It's about right for a 40-point pace. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's perfectly fair for team and player. The second issue, though, that caused me to put Bryan Rust at number 5 on the Penguins trade debate list is now they're going to have Jared McCann, Dominic Simone, Teddy Blueger, Bryan Rust. You really have 4 similar players. McCann might rise above them. He's only 22. Everyone else on that list that I mentioned is 24. In fact, I think everyone else on that list will be 25 by next season. Blueger in July, or Blueger in October, and Simone in July. Or like both of those guys are going to turn 25 this summer. So McCann is only 22, having some fun at the Worlds. It's like I think the Penguins are going to be very good for McCann, but right now they're all kind of in that same, they're all riding the same bus. So Rust is both a great candidate for another GM to say, hey, I could use a player like that. You can use a player like this. Or B, Rust is a great candidate to be included in a larger deal to balance it out. If the Penguins go big game hunting, Rust might be a great complementary piece to be shipped out in exchange for a very talented player. That's where that fits. So we put Bryan Rust at number 5. Chris, I'll jump right to Chris here. Please tell me the Kessel for Subban rumors aren't real. $10 million per for an overrated D-man that can't skate. The Kessel for Subban rumors are almost entirely blogosphere creations. If any truth springs from those two teams later, it will be purely coincidence, Chris, to anything you've read to this point. Okay? Look, it's almost too natural of a fit, however. The Penguins want to move. I mean, don't get too far ahead of me. We'll come back to Kessel, but let's say that the Penguins could use an offensive defenseman, and I don't agree that PK can't skate. I think he's actually very physical, very fluid defenseman with a hell of a shot and some good offensive instincts. He really is in line with a Brent Burns. Going to be a lot of turnovers and some mistakes in addition to the benefits that you get. And is it 9 or 9.5? He's not quite 10. I think his salary might be 10, but his cap hit is 9.5. Do me a favor, Chris, while I'm talking, look that up for me. Hop on to Cap Friendly and jump back on the message board there. It in a way, I can see where some fans or other people might say that's something to discuss in terms of trade rumors, or even that's not in the realm of reality. Nothing we've heard yet. Nothing any of my colleagues have whispered or breathed has. And I don't know that. Look, PK Subban had a little bit of a... Not everyone in the Montreal Canadiens locker room liked PK. Just don't ask Brent. Was it Max Pacioretty or Brendan Gallagher who just kind of tore him to shreds after he left in a very polite sort of way? I think it was Gallagher. I don't know that the Penguins are in a position with Mike Sullivan as head coach, Sidney Crosby as captain, to bring on board a big personality. Not with the way this year went. If this year, if they had flatlined and they needed an infusion of some life, I might say it's something to really consider, but they had a little too much life. So, nope, you could knock me over with a feather if those discussions actually ever began between the Penguins and Nashville. Nashville does want a scorer. I'm not ruling out they being one of the teams that call on Phil Kessel. I actually think that would be a great fit. And maybe, just maybe, the Penguins say, send us Ryan Ellis. I'm purely speculating, though. What about Kessel to Minnesota, and what can Minnesota offer? Oh, boy. Before I get to numbers 4, 3, 2, and 1 on the trade list, Chris, you're firing some good questions at me. We don't know, but there is a chance that the Penguins were the team which nearly plucked Jason Zucker out of Minnesota at the trade deadline, but it fell apart at the last second. There's a chance it was the Penguins. We don't know, so don't say that I said it was. We had been told that there was some interest by Minnesota in some of the Penguins players. Different things you hear bounce off the walls. You start putting a puzzle together, and it's entirely sometimes, you know, a couple of the links in the chain are wrong, so you do your best. There's a chance that the Penguins and Minnesota do hook up. And certainly Minnesota is definitely a team that should be interested in Phil Kessel. They need a clean sweep up there. And a guy like Kessel, I mean, think of his first year with the Penguins. He was quiet. He actually didn't produce very much in the first 4 months of the season. I laugh. I think back to mid-February of 2016, actually late February. Kessel and Nick Bonino each had like 10, 12. Well, Bonino had 10 points in 40 games. Kessel, I don't think, had more than 25 points. Kessel finished with, 53 points that first year as a Penguin. 55 points, maybe? Mid-50s. And that was because he exploded at the end. But he came into the Penguins. He fit in. Everything was going very smoothly, and the club got the offense. That's kind of what happens with Phil. Maybe when he's someplace too long, the bad habits rear their ugly head, and a new start is best for him. Man, I'm giving away too much already. I should make you all wait to number 1 on the trade list. But to answer your Minnesota question, circle them as a definite possibility for several Penguins players. All right? Okay. Chris, let me get back to number 4 on the Penguins trade bait list. We put this guy, goaltender Tristan Jarry, who he also will turn 25 just into next season or just before next season. This really is his time, where it's about time for him to claim an NHL net. I know he very much wants that opportunity. I mean, he really wants to get going. Last summer, when he was a restricted free agent, he was pushing the Penguins. His team was pushing the Penguins for a bigger contract, a bigger opportunity, a lot of things, for sunlight somewhere. And the word to Tristan Jarry last year was, be patient, your time will come, be it here or somewhere else. I put Tristan Jarry at a 50-50 shot to be traded this summer. There is a real possibility that a goaltending-starved team, I don't know, do I include Carolina in that with the way McElhinney and Mrazek played in the playoffs? Maybe, maybe not. But there's still enough teams out there that need a goaltender, and especially I'm thinking of a team like Edmonton, where they've got the Russian backup signed at $4 million. Thanks, Pete Chiarelli. That would give assets for Tristan Jarry. And I think that did I just get very orange? Did the screen just get very? Can I fix that? I don't know. That's very interesting. Everything just got orange. Anywho, Tristan Jarry at number 4 on the trade bait list, put it at 50-50. And trading him in the season was very much not a possibility for the Penguins because they didn't have a third goalie. If they had dealt Tristan Jarry, you're assuming a playoff run in February. Let's be honest, we all assumed a playoff run even after 2 games to the Islanders. I think most people still expected the Penguins to make a much better series of that and advance. If Murray or Casey DeSmith gets hurt sometime in late February, March, or April, the Penguins had nobody able to step into an NHL role. They had to keep Tristan Jarry at the deadline, even though some teams kicked the tires. Now in the summertime, the Penguins have a chance to bring in another goalie if they can deal Jarry for assets, like real assets. You're not going to dump him. You're going to make a real hockey trade here to improve your draft pick lot, to improve your prospect pool, or even perhaps your NHL pool. Jarry, I'd put Jarry at a 50-50. Number 3 on the list surprised me just a little bit. Where is he? I always hate when I know I've loaded some photos, but they're not there. Number 3 on the PHN Penguins trade bait list is Teddy Blueger. Not because the Penguins have to trade Teddy Blueger, but because I wonder if he really fits beyond a fourth-line center with the Penguins. I think he's got third-line potential center, or third-line center potential. That's what I meant to say. I think he's got, I really do. I think he's got that kind of potential. I don't think he'll get that kind of a chance with the Penguins. Because right now, they're down the middle, they're 3 deep. Or even 4 deep. Crosby, Malkin, Bukestad, McCann. I think McCann would step in ahead of Blueger if there was another center opening. And I really didn't think much of Blueger's work on the wings. I thought he was lost in the shuffle when he was on the left side. So it's for me, for my money and everything, for my analysis, the report cards and everything we saw. Blueger is center or bust. Let me turn down the sound just a hair. Okay, right about there. Yeah. Turn it up, turn it down. Okay, right. Well, it's so sensitive and fickle. There's like just a minor hair. There, I think I've got it. All right. Hey, Medina. How are you? As Paul Coffey saying Subban... Oh, Paul Coffey said Subban can't skate? I must have missed that. My grading and my eyes have told me PK is just fine. I'm not sure. Not sure what Coffee was saying. Okay. Maybe Maatta to Anaheim for Sami Vatanen. Let's see. That's Faye. Okay, so Kofefi. We do know that Olli Maatta was involved in the trade. The Penguins involved Olli Maatta's name in the trade talks. I can't say that Olli Maatta was involved in the trade talks. He didn't pick up the phone. The Penguins did involve the name, or make Olli Maatta available in the trade talks with both Los Angeles and Anaheim. Let me get Teddy off the screen there. It boiled down. It didn't quite work. So, boy, it's getting even more orange, isn't it? I'm going to try to turn it off. Nope, I can't do it. It's all auto. Wonder why it's getting so orange. If that's the worst that happens on this show, I'm just fine with it. How about you? Anyway, Anaheim has a lot of changes to make, a lot of holes to fill. I'm not going to say Sami Vatanen or any names, but I do think there was some interest on the part of both of those LA area teams in Maatta. The teams just couldn't make it work. Sportsnet, I think it was Elliot Friedman in his 31 Thoughts, said that the Penguins found the trade market bare for Maatta. That's not quite how we heard it, but it's not far off either. That the Penguins, if they move Maatta, it will be moving Maatta out to save the $4 million, much more so than it will be to acquire an asset. They may have to trade Maatta for a similar contract player that the opposing team doesn't have room for either. Because look at the Penguins' defense. On the left side, you've got Dumoulin, Johnson, Pettersson, Riikola waiting in the wings. If they choose, I don't think it'll be difficult to bring Trotman back and Ruedel. I like the way the Penguins carried 8 defensemen this season. I think they should carry one extra lefty, one extra righty, instead of all lefties like they did this past season. So, with Maatta, though, Maatta is also on the trade list. But getting back to Teddy Blueger, 10 points in 28 games. I think he's got a world of potential. I really do think he can be a third-line center-type player. Let's bring back Teddy Blueger. Great speed, just tons of hustle. He looks like a Tasmanian devil on the ice sometimes when he's really unleashed. When he's at center and he's comfortable, he's not thinking, he's not waiting for someone else to do it. When he's at center, he's the guy taking the lead and the charge. I mean, worst case scenario for the Penguins and Teddy Blueger is that he's their fourth-line center next year. That's the worst case scenario. I think the Penguins would be quite happy with that. But there again, another team takes a look at him and thinks he can be their third-line center. At his cost value, what have you. And the Penguins have to be honest with themselves as well, in so much as how difficult is it really to find a fourth-line center? Matt Cullen was the exception to almost every rule, right? That this year Sullivan deployed Cullen against opponents' top lines, defensive zone draws, down the line, you name it. Matt Cullen drew that dirty assignment. If the Penguins see other available centers on the market, that makes Blueger expendable if somebody else wants him. As an opposing GM, I'd take a run at him. Maybe if I had a scoring prospect who was fading or a contract I wanted to move, Blueger would be a guy I asked for as part of that package, however you want to phrase it there. Alrighty, so there's 5, 4, and 3 on the Penguins trade bait list. Let me hit the message board here. Teddy has speed, has grit. Yep, he can score. If he can score at the NHL level, that remains to be seen a little bit. He's improved every single year through college and the AHL. And who's to say Cullen stays? Well, I think the assumption is Cullen retires, although I wonder very much if he's going to actually retire. Okay, let me just be honest. I don't know that he wants to retire. That's tough. I mean, when you retire, your entire life changes. Something you've done since you were 4 years old, 3 in some cases. You stop doing it. I won't out the Penguins alumni who told me this story. After he was done with the Penguins and he had an NHL career that went well beyond the Penguins, he played in Europe for a bit as well. Came home, put the skates in the closet for years. Couldn't touch them. Just was done. I don't think Cullen has hit that point yet where he's ready to throw the skates in the closet and be done, which is going to make his decision very interesting. He probably will acquiesce that the Penguins have to move on, but we'll see. Who do you think the Penguins should select in the draft? Kofefi asks. I really don't know right now. I think that picture will become clearer in the next couple weeks as we start digging, start asking scouts, start getting little whispers from the front office at guys, that they're looking at. All of those things will start. Right now, the Penguins, I don't know if the brain trust is back from the World Championships yet. I know they went over there about 10 days ago, maybe a week ago. Dan, I think that's quite interesting about Cullen's retirement. Do you think he has enough faith in the Penguins that we can be a top contender for next year's Cup? Oh, I don't know that faith has a lot to do with it. Matt Cullen found his spiritual home, his hockey spiritual home, in Pittsburgh with Mike Sullivan, with that crew. I really think that Matt Cullen truly found a niche that was made for him with the Penguins. It didn't work out in Minnesota. He wasn't the same player. He didn't have the same niche. He didn't have the same locker room presence. None of it was there with another team. So I think it would be the Penguins or bust if he chooses to come back. And I think if you really pressed him, hand on a Bible, do you want to play next year? I think he'd say yes. But then want and should begin that debate. I think that's been his debate for a while. Want or should. And they aligned and agreed to come back this year for the Penguins. I thought that was a no-brainer for both parties. It really should have worked better. And quite frankly, if Cullen had some more stable or sturdy line mates, when he had Riley Sheahan on one side and who played the right wing? A lot of times Dominic Simone. What are the odds? That line really had some pep. And then with Zach Aston Reese on that line, and it really, that was the big line. That was the line when the Penguins really had, I thought, a fourth line that rivaled the Islanders' supposed fourth line, was Sheahan, Cullen, and Aston Reese as their fourth line. That's when they were shutting down opponents' top lines. Really shutting them down. And I had asked them a few times. They were loving it. They were really taking pride in fact, Aston Reese was even scoring a few points, and so was Cullen. And And I kept kind of needling them a little bit, Aston Reese mainly, about that. He would just kind of smile and say how much pride they were feeling in that. And Sheehan gave the exact same answer before he was surprisingly dealt, that they were really having it. Not to discredit the Blues, they played great. That set up a roster with less talent and less speed, like the Blues can get to a cup final. Can the Pens make a fast turnaround and make more runs? Yes. Yes, Chris. They absolutely can. Jim Rutherford is in a difficult spot because of what I just said. If he hits a couple home runs this summer, the Penguins are right back there. They've got Sidney Crosby. They've got scoring on the wings with Jake Gensel. Well, they could probably use a bit more scoring on the wings, but they've got some scoring, right? They've got depth down the middle. They've got a solid defense, and I know the blogosphere can scream and stomp their feet and throw all the Jack Johnson stats they want at me. And I got one of those today. As long as the Penguins have Hornquist, Goodbranson, Jack Johnson, and Chris Letang, they'll never do anything. Down go the Mackenzies. Take off, you hoser. It's the last jelly donut. You boys go get me a bear. I'm not even going to try to do Mel Blanc's voice. And I just realized that most of you probably have no idea who Mel Blanc was greatest cartoon voice of all time. Every cartoon that, if you're a Gen Xer, every cartoon that you watched, Mel Blanc. Anyway, and he was the voice of the father for Bob and Doug. Mackenzie, where are my hands not going to hit the boys? Okay, there. What was I even? Oh, yeah, the Penguins turnaround. Yeah, if they can add some scoring on the wings this summer, they really do have enough other pieces. And if they get the buy-in from Evgeny Malkin again, absolutely the Penguins can contend. And the Penguins have a wonderfully balanced offense right now. Letang, Schultz, and Goodbranson on the right side. Dumoulin, Johnson, and Pettersson on the left. Sure, they can improve one or so of those pieces. Sure. And maybe they do, maybe they don't. They don't have to. But what the Blues have been able to do, and if you watch Craig Berube over the last couple weeks, what's been the word he used? Resilience. Now, I know all of you Penguins fans are watching. Does that sound familiar? That was Mike Sullivan's go-to phrase for well over a year. Resiliency. We have to be resilient, 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 resilient. So a team that really has the right mental attitude, that goes a long way. 2, the Blues have a ton, and I mean a metric crap ton of talent. Although technically a metric ton is actually less than a ton. You know the expression, though. The Blues have talent. O'Reilly and Tarasenko. Who am I missing? I mean, you just go down the Blues lineup. In fact, let me pull up their lines here. St. Louis Blues line. There we go. And we'll just here's why the Blues have a Stanley Cup. Because you got Tarasenko on the top line and Jaden Schwartz there with him. O'Reilly and David Perron has been better the last couple of years than he ever was in Pittsburgh. When I say David Perron, my initial impression was the guy who was really not very good in Pittsburgh. But in Vegas last year, St. Louis this year, Perron was a threat O'Reilly's had a great year. Bozak and Robert Thomas and Maroon has had how many big goals in the playoffs? Oscar Sundqvist. Don't bring up the fact that the Penguins traded Sundqvist for Reeves, please. Alex Steen on the fourth line, for gosh sake. Steen has been a second-line guy most of his career. He's kind of gotten to the end here, and their defense is very good with Peter Angelo and Periaco, Joel Edmondson, Vince Dunn, etc., etc. They're deep. They're talented. You don't have to play with speed. And that's one of those things, Chris. It's one of those things that, and I know fans here in Pittsburgh have just kind of wrapped their arms around it because it worked here for 2 years. Speed! Well, you don't need to have speed to win. Speed helps. You can play different styles of game with the speed, but it's not necessarily a prerequisite if you do other things well and you play the game the right way. Now, having said that, let's say the 2016 Penguins met the 2019 Blues. The 2016 Penguins would just skate them right out of the building because that Penguins team had the talent and the speed. Do I think Bukestad is a good enough third-line center? I think that my initial impressions are yes. My initial impressions of him with Dominic Simone and Patrick Hornquist. Now, Bukestad didn't do well without Hornquist. But with Hornquist, actually with Hornquist and Simone, Bukestad had a very good year. He's still a little bit light on the scoring sheet. He really is. He's a career, well, after last season, he's a career 9.1% shooter. I looked it up this morning. When I almost put him on the trade bait list. I considered it. He's got to up that. He's got to get more pucks past the goalie because he's getting looks in the paint, in the crease, in those dirty zones. He's got to begin to bury those. And then I'll tell you without a doubt that Bukestad is. He's only 26. There's still some room for growth there. And I think the Penguins game is going to fit him like a glove. Bukestad and Hornquist in 220 minutes playing together over the last 25, 26 games. Do you know how many goals those guys allowed at 5-on-5? 3. That's it. If you extrapolate that over the course of a season, line mates playing together for about 1,000 minutes, think about that. Think about that if you extrapolate that, they're going to allow 10 to 12 goals a season. So, yes. He's got to score a few more, though. Or Hornquist has to score a few more and bump up Bukestad's point total. One of the two has to happen. Sundqvist has been amazing for them, and Thomas is a phenom in the making. Yeah, Sundqvist is playing his very best hockey. I mean, he went through waivers earlier this year. But in the playoffs, man, dude's a beast. This year's Blues are the 16 Penguins, in my opinion. I'd take the Penguins in that every day of the week. That 2016 Penguins team by the end was special. And I mean unbeatable special. Absolutely. You don't have to play with speed unless your roster is built to play with speed. Exactly. But if your roster is built to play a physical or a talented game, then you have to play that too. You just have to play it the right way. You can't turn the puck over. You can't make it easy on the other team. If you don't make it easy on the other team, every game is up for grabs, and whoever does what they do better wins. All right, we cakin'. Do you think the Penguins will adjust to a new hybrid GMJR plus Coach Sullivan's style, speed/tenacity? Will they go back to the speed game and invest into that market, or go stretch passing and possession? Well, I think stretch passes is not necessarily a style so much as a tool that every team has in their toolbox when the other team wants to get a little aggressive on the forecheck or over-aggressive, or wants to leave the middle of the ice open and take away the wall, right up the middle. And you can send that runner through center ice and have your defenseman pop it on his stick. Do that a couple times, and the other team begins to almost knocked over Bob and Doug again. Let me move them out here. But I think I know what you're asking, Wee Cakin. And the answer is, I believe the Penguins are going to go for this more physical, low play style. That also includes possession, and it includes speed. It's that speed, it's that tenacity, and possession, which will bring the Penguins talent like Sidney Crosby, like Jake Gensel. And God help him, Evgeny Malkin, if he realizes it. I feel like William Wallace. I see it in you. And God help you. Was that today's Wednesdays? I guess it was Monday night. Braveheart was on like every 2 hours. One of the channels had it on the loop every 3 hours. And how many times did I watch it? Probably 2. If Malkin were to realize his potential has not diminished, and that not playing this stick handling on the rush game, if he realizes that game is a bit passé and this new game suits him well, dear Lord, there's not a defensive pairing in the league that will contain him. There's not. He is strong as an ox. He can stick handle in a phone booth. So you get him down in the corner, stick his nose in there. He really can be like Jágr when he wants to be. Pluck that puck right out, dance around one defenseman, create that open space where either he's got a scoring chance or one of his wingers has that chance, or if the defenseman wants to step into the slot, all of a sudden everything opens up if Malkin will just do it. Anywho, by the way, the trade bait list. We're 42 minutes into this show here, and I still haven't gotten to number 2 or number 1 on the Penguins trade bait list, although I'm guessing most of you have already read what I wrote today and what PHN published. I'm guessing you have. Maybe not, right? I'm playing with the sound again. I'm trying to get it perfect because I can't leave well enough alone. Guess I'm going to have to talk just a little softer, a little louder. Now I guess I'm Otis Day in the Knights. A little bit softer now. Number 2 on the trade bait list, we can talk about it. Speaking of Otis Day and the Knights, hello. Fat, drunk, and stupid is no way to go through life, son. Anyway, number 2 on the Penguins trade bait list. Olli Maatta. I think it's a foregone conclusion that Maatta will not be a Penguin when the Penguins season begins next year. He had a hell of a run. He had an absolute hell of a run. He's never quite recaptured the status from his rookie year. Not entirely his fault. When a guy goes through cancer treatments and the injuries and the shoulder surgeries, I mean, he's had a full career and he's going to turn 25. So I don't necessarily feel bad for Olli Maatta. But at $4 million and a healthy scratch in 3 of the 4 Penguins playoff games, his time is probably up. And number 1, you know it's coming. Don't give me side-eye, Phil. I didn't cause the problems in the locker room. Don't be looking at me like that. Don't be rolling your eyes at me. I just realized both of those pictures had those unique expressions, and what the hell, roll with it, right? But Phil Kessel, you cannot rebound a team if you've got some locker room tensions. Just can't do it. And so there is numbers 2 and 1. So click on that like button while we're chatting. Click on the share button. Blast this out to all of your Twitter, your Facebook friends so they can join us. We're going to do this every Wednesday. When I have time, we'll do it at 1 o'clock. Otherwise, we'll do it at 6 o'clock. And I do need a sound engineer. But is it low? Yeah, hang on 1 second. Watch this. As a radio guy, it's not loud. I want it a little bit louder yet. Hang on. Okay. Right. Oh, I'm now in the sweet spot, right there in the yellow. Louder for the people in the. Is that good enough now, y'all? I'll turn it up just a hair more. Hopefully that's not too much. There, I'm in the yellow, which is right where I want to be. Not the red, not just the green. Did you hear about Kessel going to the Wild? Nick Robertson asks. I believe it's a possibility. In the various things we've been told, we've never been told specifically Phil Kessel, Minnesota Wild, Phil Kessel. We do believe there were some talks during the season. We think the Wild had an interest in some of the Penguins players. And we think the Wild are on the short list for Phil Kessel. We have not been told that specifically. Just when you start putting different pieces of the puzzle together, there seems to be some symmetry. So don't take it for more than it's worth, okay? I'm not telling you yes, but it's also maybe worthy. I'm not telling you no either. Still too low. Oh, come on. Okay, I'm not going to turn it up any louder than that because right there is at the edge. I'm on the edge of glory, and I'm hanging on a moment with you. I'm on the edge. And I do this without drinking. Isn't that amazing? If they trade Kessel, I would like to get a young type player that can bring his scoring. Look, if the Penguins trade Kessel, at that point, you're kind of... The market has collapsed for Phil Kessel. You can want a young player all you want that can score another 30 goals. Think about this. Kessel's going to turn 32 in, is it August? September? July? Whatever. If you have a player who can score 30 goals, who's 25, why would you trade for Phil Kessel? Why would you do that? And this is Elliot Friedman in his 31 Thoughts, said coaches around the league vetoed trade talks with the Penguins over Phil Kessel because they wouldn't deal with it. I know y'all love Phil. From an objective standpoint, however, it's a shame that Phil has worn out his welcome because he still fits with the Penguins better than any other team in the league. He just does. But he's got to buy in a little bit. He has to realize that this will be over someday. And if you don't work your ass off to maximize every ounce of it, when it's gone, you will regret so much. At least most people will. When it's all over, when they take the stick out of your hands and the only place you can skate is at an old-timers game, man, you look back and say, if I had worked harder, if I'd worked out more, gotten in better shape, taken better care of myself. We've talked about this on the Spit and Chicklets podcast. Andy O'Brien talked about making concessions to Phil Kessel for his diet. It's like there's just some things you're not going to do. You know, getting Phil Kessel to give up the pop or the snacks just isn't going to happen. Now, I go through stretches when I destroy bags of chips and bags of Swedish fish or licorice. And then I'll go through a couple months while I'll have none. Go ahead, offer me $6.8 million. Actually, go ahead and offer me $8 million. And say, Dan, no more soda, no more chips and candy. See how quickly I give it up. And I think, well, I mean, that's maybe what's frustrating to so many people in the Phil Kessel universe, is that here is a guy with talent, truly remarkable talent, that has never truly maxed it out. In short bursts, I think he has, but he's never claimed it. And why do you think Team USA didn't, left him off the World Championship, not the World Championship, the World Cup roster? He got a pretty good dig on Twitter a few years ago. But, I mean, here's a guy who's easily one of the 10 best American players in the game. And so it's going to be difficult to trade Phil Kessel. It won't be the easiest thing in the world. Because as teams lurch toward rigid structure, look, every coach in the league realized what John Tortorella in Columbus and what Barry Trotz on the island did this year. Now, Columbus is a little bit of a different case in the end because they had so much talent with Duchesne, Panarin, and the boys. But for most of the season, Columbus was a structure team, and the Islanders were always a structure team. And it hasn't gone unnoticed that the better coached teams advanced and the more talented teams are golfing. It hasn't been unnoticed. Okay. Oh, where did the video go? Anyway, we're still recording. Yeah, we're still live. I guess I hit a button somewhere because it kicked me back to the homepage. Let me jump back in so I can see all of your questions and your comments. Phil Kessel still rolling his eyes at me. I get a bad rap. You hate Phil Kessel. You love Jack Johnson. Neither is true. If I were a GM in several spots, like if I were John Chayka in Arizona, if I were, I don't know about Los Angeles. Los Angeles needs a total rebuild. You can't take a 31-year-old, but maybe it makes sense. I don't think Edmonton does. But if Dallas can't re-sign Zuccarello, there are a handful of places, if I were the GM, I would look seriously at Phil Kessel because for the next 2 years, you're going to get the best Phil Kessel. I think, right? So I don't hate Phil Kessel at all. I think just a change is necessary, but for both sides. Okay. Perfect volume for me, Dan. I'm in an airport without headphones. We caking. Where are you going? 1. And 2, so you're that ignoramus. Hi, everybody at Gate C. Um, remember when the Pens made a pitch to sign Zach Parise? How bad does his contract with the Wild look today? Yeah. He and Ryan Suter both signed those mega deals. And they're both stuck in Minnesota. Roberto Luongo has talked about that too, Joe. Luongo regrets his contract. He could have been traded to a cup contender. He could have helped his current teams by being traded at times in his career, but that contract was so onerous that it just couldn't be done. Not that playing in Miami every day is a bad thing, but I think every athlete wants to have that big moment, and Luongo will forever be remembered as never having that Stanley Cup. Getting one crack at it, kind of like Marino in the Super Bowl, and then never again. And make no mistake, I mean, he's 40 now. For those of you who have just watched hockey in the last 4 or 5 years, you don't remember how truly great Luongo was. He was, well, with Marty Brodeur and Patrick Waugh kicking around, well, at least Brodeur anyway. Luongo was never the best, but my gosh, he was right there for a long time. He just played on some really bad teams. There's definitely a guy who deserved a better fate than he received. That's for sure. All right, Nick says Zucker and Minnesota's 12th overall pick for Phil Kessel would do it. The Penguins would take that 7 days a week. Minnesota wouldn't. Would I put the odds that Malkin wants to be traded over or under 35%? Aaron, I think you've pegged it, actually. I think it's a 1 in 3. I really do. I think I've said 25 to 33%. So if I had to take an under of 35, I'll take the under, but not by much. And quite frankly, I think the lack of noise on that front bodes well for both sides coming to an agreement, ironing this out, smoothing over the silk. And look, the same thing that happened last summer is going to happen to all of us again. We'll all get our patties smacked by the fans who tweet and retweet, "You said they were trading Malkin." Well, no, I never did say that, but I know the tweets are coming. Every jackass blogger who needs to feel like he has a say or she needs, have a say or feel better about themselves is going to try to come at every writer in town, me included, and say, "See, you don't know anything. They didn't trade Malkin. You said they would." I've never maintained anything other than Jim Rutherford is leaning that way, or was leaning that way, and that Evgeny Malkin had to do some work to smooth things over, to buy into the Penguins, or get going. I hopefully you all have realized that. Hey, NES Addict is back. I haven't caught much about the Kessel drama besides he and Sullivan over the years. Are there more stories between him and teammates? I'm in Arizona, so it's hard to get much Pens info. Zach, just hop on to Pittsburgh Hockey Now, man. In fact, here, I will type it for you. How's that? Kessel is a peculiar guy. He's given teammates flack and grief and hell. And my impression, take it for just that, okay? Don't take it as someone told me this. My impression of it, the teammates find it funny. When you ask guys about Kessel, Crosby included, "Oh, he's so funny." And what the famous video with Kessel going like this, and Kunitz loses it on the bench, laughing. I've always taken a negative view of that video clip. I know fans love it. You've probably seen it 1,000 times. I've always taken a negative view because his team didn't take him seriously in that moment. He was furious, and they're laughing. So I don't know if there's been friction with other teammates. Certainly, the guys who were busting their ass this season could not have been happy with the turnovers and the lack of effort at times. You know, that whole Kessel Brassard, when those guys were like just hanging out watching the other without assisting, that stuff could not have sat well. And I don't know how seriously the Penguins staff takes it when Kessel's screaming, you know, for a bottle of water or a hat, you know, to do interviews or stuff like that. I don't think they take it personally. Our competition. Someone sent me the article. DK wrote a little bit of a piece about Kessel's behavior like that. So I'm not breaking new ground here. I feel like I can say, yeah, I've seen it. I've seen Kessel bark at the PR staff. Friction, I don't know, though. To answer your question fully, who asked that? Zach? To give you a lot of information about that, I think people's like, yeah, that's Phil. And no one takes it too seriously. All right. Okay. Oh, going back to Minnesota from Las Vegas. Oh, that is the most depressing flight. The best flight is when you're coming into Vegas. You look over and you see Aladdin, Tropicana, Luxor, Monterey. That's the best flight. The worst flight is when you're taking off and you know you're going back to like Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and you're like, oh. I used to go every December before hockey took over my life. And that was such a great, it'd be 50 degrees. You're taking off, you're in jeans, kind of, little hoodie. You land in Pittsburgh and the captain comes on the intercom. Welcome to Pittsburgh. We'll be landing here shortly. You'll be, what do they call it? Unboarding the plane in 4 minutes. Make sure, all of your overhead bags are stored properly. Right now, the temperature is 25 degrees. You're like, kill me! I think Kessel has the demeanor of a serial killer. I don't know about that, Thrift Theater, but... Okay, what happened to Brassard? How is he so bad suddenly? I think everything messed with his head. Truly I do. I think he got knocked off his rhythm and his game by his role with the Penguins, and it never clicked. It didn't click all season. I think he was behind the 8 ball and fighting it the whole time. I think with a summer of work, I think with a situation that he chooses rather than having it be chosen for him. He was essentially relegated to 4th line duty in Colorado, was he not? 3rd line center, even 4th line. So I think going to a situation, I think Brassard would be a guy who would fit in with L.A. or even Anaheim, for that matter. I think he'd rather be a 2nd line center on a team that needs to improve instead of a 3rd or 4th line center with a championship team. I think he wants to be a guy who lifts his team to that championship level rather than rides along with it. I empathize a lot with that. I guess we'll leave it at that, right? Do we trade down for Kessel to retain cap space, get a draft pick and a decent player? Is this a learning experience for the Penguins staff? What do you mean by a learning experience for the Penguins staff? Don't get players with reputations. Oh, I see. The Penguins have 2. Oh, I don't know. I think Jim Rutherford at this point in his career, I don't know that he has too much of a learning curve. Perhaps Bill Guerin has gotten quite the education over the last couple seasons. I don't know that Jim Rutherford has. That's for sure. Hey, Keith, how are you? Is the Malkin talk fully off the table, or is there any momentum? I think all is quiet. We talked about this a little bit earlier, Keith. Yeah, everything is quiet right now. Radio silence, which tells me that the heat has gone out of the room. The emotion has left the room, and the reality of the situation is probably on both sides now, right? Jim Rutherford was probably just pissed off level 10 at the end of the season because he put together what should have been a very good team. He put together a Stanley Cup-worthy team on paper. And Evgeny Malkin was upset for various reasons, frustrated with his own game, upset that the Penguins get swept, upset that Sullivan was cracking the whip on him, all of these things. Now that the emotion has left, I guess it's like you have one of those knockdown, drag-out fights with your spouse, your girlfriend, whatever, and you're ready to just to walk away, never talk to each other again, and then an hour later you're like, I don't want to do that. I would imagine that's where the Penguins and Malkin are going to get to, unless Malkin or Rutherford says otherwise. You never know when the last straw has been broken, but I think the lack of noise on this, Keith, is probably a good sign for reconciliation. Kofefe, would you rather see Pens versus Stars or Pens versus Blackhawks in a Stanley Cup final? Well, in fairness, if the Penguins played the Chicago Blackhawks, I'd go hang with Laz, and Laz would come and hang with me, Mark Lazarus of The Athletic. It'd be nice to see my friends in Chicago. I guess there's still a couple people who've kept their jobs out there that I would hang out with. I really enjoy the Chicago contingent. They've treated me very well. We have a good time when Chicago comes to Pittsburgh or when I can get out there. So I'd love to see Chicago and the Penguins, but I don't think we're ever going to get that, at least not with these. We'll never get the Taves-Crosby Stanley Cup final. This does not, keep talking about the Malkin thing. This does not alleviate the insubordination issues that loom. To me, that's the real issue for 71 and Mike Sullivan. Well, it does in the sense that Malkin has to realize that was not acceptable, right? That's all part of the reconciliation. Buying in is part of the deal. Not just saying, I want to be a Pittsburgh Penguin. That's not good enough. Malkin has to say, I buy in, too. I will buy in. I'm in. Not just I want to be here, but I want to be here and do the right things. That's all part of the reconciliation. If Malkin and Kessel are both in Pittsburgh next season, who do you think is more likely to buy in and who is more likely to be traded if they don't? I think Malkin is likely to buy in. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't, but I think he will. I don't know that... I just don't know that that's Kessel. You know what I mean? They used to say of Alexei Kovalev, the great thing about him is if you pay him, he'll play hockey in a parking lot. The bad thing about Alexei Kovalev is if he were getting paid, he'd play hockey in a parking lot. I feel the same way about Phil Kessel. The great thing is Kessel will just go play. The bad thing is Kessel will just go play. So I hope my inflection answered your question somewhat or shined a little bit of light into there. What is the absolute largest overreaction trade rumor that you maybe heard through the grapevine that is plausible with the situation? There have been absolutely none. I kid you not. I'm not burying them. I'm not hiding them. The only one we were able to confirm or know existed was the Florida Panthers' interest. And that may have been just cursory. So I can't tell you any super duper, believe me. If I had anything, it'd be on the front page of Pittsburgh Hockey Now or Boston Hockey Now or the hopeful third site coming next week, and then the fourth site a week after that, and then the fifth site, and then the sixth. Now I feel like Monica on Friends. Seven. All right, kids, someone gave me a downvote. To hell with you. I think you should leave a comment why you left the downvote. I think that should be mandatory. If you give me the thumbs down, I want to know why. If it were the sound, like I had the sound just a hair down for a minute, I wanted to lower it. Or if you just really hate when I talk about Phil Kessel, I think you should comment. Do me a favor, like and share and subscribe. I'm not sure if we're going to keep these on the Pittsburgh Sports Live, if we're going to start doing them dual on Facebook, or as we add more Hockey Now sites, if we're going to actually have all of our sites do one show a week and put them all on a channel. I think that's something we have to discuss. Maybe you'll let me know what you think about that, if I should have just a separate little YouTube channel for these chats, for hockey chats from all around the league. I think that'd be pretty cool, actually. Alrighty then. I think that's enough for me. I've done an hour and 12 minutes. I have not drooled, slobbered, or spit up on myself. I don't think I've sworn. Although, no. I didn't use any of the 7 words you can't say on television, which is sometimes a work of art for me. Do me a favor. Check out PittsburghHockeyNow.com. Keep those clicks coming. We're really getting into the dead zone. I mean, I've been writing for the Penguin season has been over for more than a month now, and every single day we have content on there, analysis of a situation, player report cards. We can start to get a sense, hopefully pretty soon, of players the Penguins are talking to about contract extensions, etc. That is something that we hope to be diving into. Actually, there's only 3. There's 3 Penguins beat writers. Well, 2.5. I'll count myself as a half. Two Penguins beat writers still left on the beat from this season. 2 number ones left. Yoey and Bumboli, Trib and The Athletic. And then there's us. Wherever we fit, no one knows. Okay, kids. Hey, it's all-you-can-eat wings at Redbeard's tonight, Wednesday night. Check out the RedbeardsPGH.com website for their daily specials. Go there for happy hour. Be like, I read that hockey site, and your guys' ads all over it. All right, that's enough for me. For Bob. For Doug. And Rowdy. Have fun, kids. We'll do it again next Wednesday. See you then.